Welcome to Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg Mccallum. Long-form, honest conversations with founders and entrepreneurs from around the world. This is part 2 of this episode. Be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. Link in the description.
This episode is sponsored by Founder Catalyst. Get 10% off their one-off fee by using the link in the description. More on them later. For now, enjoy the show. You know, for people, because if I think there's a lot of, like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of this idea that this is all quite mythical arts kind of stuff. So yeah, enlighten us. What are the benefits and what does it all mean?
Let's go back to basics. So I'll imagine myself back at Google in 2005, explaining the auction to people. Because as I said at the beginning, we had to go and really explain what Google was. People didn't know. Sure. Obviously, most people now, especially in advertising, would know what Google Ads are, but not everyone does. But at the time, even people in advertising didn't know what Google Ads was. So it was very much educational stuff. So we had to spend a few slides showing a picture of Larry and Sergey, talking about share and all this sort of thing. But so Google Ads, what is Google Ads? So Google Ads is when you go onto Google, you search for a pair of Nike trainers, you'll see a whole load of ads. So if you search for Nike trainers, you'll see these kind of visual ads. Those are called Google Shopping, and they'll have a picture of a pair of trainers, and they'll have the price. And you can click through and you'll get that to the page of those exact pair of trainers. And it's kind of shopping comparison. So you'll see JD Sports, you'll see lots of different Nike themselves, you'll see lots of different retailers. You can compare the same trainers. So if you put in a particular pair of trainers, you'll see the same pair of trainers and see the prices all across the board, and you could choose to click on those or not. The main form of advertising that Google makes money from is called Google Ads themselves, or search ads. Those are the kind of typical kind of two-liner ads you'll see with a headline, a description, a URL to click through, and you go to whatever you search for, landing page, and then maybe you buy that service or you buy that product. How does that work from a sort of advertiser point of view? So how it works is that every time you click on one of those ads, you're costing the advertiser a certain amount of money. So if you click on that ad for trainers, maybe you're costing Nike somewhere between £1 maybe, or £2 or £3. And obviously they're hoping to sell a pair of trainers out of those clicks and to make a profit. So that the art is to obviously make profit above what you spend on advertising those pair of trainers. If you're not doing that, then you're losing money and you're not generating that. Or how does it work in terms of what's the art of doing that, and how does the auction work? So there's an ad auction effectively. So when you search for something, so you're searching for trainers, and then how are those advertisers kind of being served up by Google? They're being served up because all of those providers, so JD Sports, Nike, another retailer, John Lewis, say, they've all got, say, Nike trainers or red Nike trainers or Nike Air Jordans, whatever they've got a whole load of keywords around Nike and their trainers, and they're going to show an ad based on matching to what you search for, all in this, obviously in a second, in a millisecond. They're going to go around all their computers and servers all around Europe, all around the world, and find those advertisers who are in the market for Nike trainers, and they're going to have someone like me who's going to be managing a campaign for them, and they're going to have added all these keywords to that campaign so that they want to match to people who search for Nike trainers, and they're going to have an ad that's ready. So they've got an ad that's all about, if they're a good campaign, they'll have an ad that's all about the Air Jordans and is very specific and very, very relevant to that search. If they're a bad advertiser, maybe they've just got a few keywords around Nike and they just show a fairly bland, generic ad. But the art of it really is to really closely correspond to what people search for. The more you can do that, the better you'll get, the better click-through rate you'll get through. So click-through rate, a bit of sort of industry jargon, so click-through rate, or CTR, is how many times out of the hundreds. You only paid for clicks, so it's PPC, it's pay-per-click, because you only pay for clicks. So you don't pay for being shown. So that ad for Nike could show 100 times. If no one chose to click on it, it wouldn't cost Nike anything. The click-through rate is how many times out of 100 expressed as a percentage where you clicked. So a typical click-through rate for, say, e-commerce might be 3 or 4%. It might be more, might be less. That kind of thing. So you're only getting clicked probably 3 or 4 times out of 100. You're actually showing these other 97 times, you're not getting charged for that. When there's a click, you get charged for that. How does Google figure out who to show at the top? Because obviously the top is the best position. You'll get the most traffic at the top. It's the most noticeable. If you're on a little mobile phone, then 1 or 2 is all you're going to see unless you scroll down. So that's the best position to be in from an advertiser's point of view. It's the most visible. It's not about, like I was saying before, in the early days of search advertising with Overture, it was all about who pays the most, and you can see that. These guys are prepared to pay £1. These guys are pay 50p. They'll be below. Google's kind of innovation in creating AdWords, as it was called then, now Google Ads, was to create this idea of relevancy as well. So what you have is you have two things. You say you have a maximum bid. So you say I'm prepared to pay up to £5 for a click on my trainer's campaign, and you can have different bids all across your campaign for different things depending on how sort of profitable, how successful they are in the past. But you combine that with a quality score to create an overall score. The quality score itself is made up of lots of different things, but the main thing it's made up of is that click-through rate. And the reason that's important is because that's a measure of both relevancy and quality. So as you can imagine, if you just have a really, as I say, if you just got all your keywords that are relevant to all the things you sold and stuck them in a big bucket and just stuck an ad on top of them, then you can't actually respond to all the different things. You could just say, we're Amazon and we sell loads of stuff. And that's not going to be a very compelling, call to action. That's not going to tell anyone anything. What Amazon in reality does is have thousands and thousands of ads that are, we've got a pair of kitchen scissors, and we've got the best books, and we've got the best CD, and we've got et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've got all these different things, and they're responding to what people search for. And then you, as a user of Google, is like, oh yeah, look, I was looking for kitchen scissors. Amazon sell kitchen scissors. I'm going to go to there. They say they've got the best prices. So that's really what you're trying to achieve. You need to attract people's attention. You need the best user journey from an advertiser and from a user's point of view, essentially, is to search something, see that thing advertised specifically in an ad, in the title, maybe then repeated in the description as well, some kind of offer or call to action, sale now on, get your kitchen scissors, we've got the best kitchen scissors, click through to a page that's all about kitchen scissors and not about anything else. So here's our selection of kitchen scissors, and then you choose the one and you buy the kitchen scissors, and that's the end, and everyone's happy. So that's what you're trying to achieve all the time. You're trying to really have these kind of micro matches. You don't want to just be matching generically. Sometimes you might have some things which are more generic, and that's maybe at the top of the funnel, but a lot of the time it's all about bottom of the funnel, performance marketing. Someone wants something. People have described Google as a desire engine. So you tell Google what you want, and then Google, in its advertising and in its natural results, gives you those things that you're looking for. And that's how it works. And that's why Google is a huge company in terms of users and in terms of advertisers. Because it's amazing for companies. You think about how advertising used to work. They show you an ad in the paper, or they show you an ad on TV, or you're walking through Piccadilly Circle, you see an ad for something. Well, that's very untargeted. You don't know who those people are, what they want. Are they interested in what you're doing? They're just looking up, oh, okay, I saw something, so I want that. I'm not interested in it. So that kind of advertising obviously still exists, but there's a lack of targeting in the way to that. You're just kind of blasting the message out there to let everyone, and it can be quite expensive because obviously to advertise on TV or to have a huge billboard, it's quite expensive. Whereas this kind of search advertising is the beauty of it is that the consumer themselves tells you through the medium of search what they want. You can say, I've got that, here it is. Buy it, and you buy it straight away, and it's all very kind of seamless, and it's delivered to you, later that day, even potentially with Amazon or the next day. So that's the beauty of it. That's why loads of companies spend huge amounts of money on Google. You'd be surprised how much. I won't go into how much people spend. I kind of know what people spend on Google, huge companies, but it's millions of dollars potentially every quarter and every month on that stuff. That's why Google's able to make kind of revenues it does, which you can see when they announce the results. So it's very effective. It's definitely mainly, as I say, marketing speak. You might think of the marketing funnel. You've got kind of awareness at the top, consideration and purchase at the bottom. It's in that bottom part a lot of the time because people are telling you what they want, so they already know what they want. It's not so good if you're launching something. So if you, Greg, has invented this amazing widget that does something that's really useful, but then no one's ever heard of it, no one's ever realized they needed it, then Google's not going to be a good place for you to advertise it because no one's looking for that. They've never heard of it. They're not going to search for it. It's not going to work. It's only really good for things that people have heard of and people want. If you want to advertise something like that, you're going to have to go to social media, to Facebook or somewhere where you're just kind of pushing things in front of people and telling them about things, making them aware of things at the top of the funnel. Now, Google can
that's then interest based as opposed to
exactly,
search based.
So people will be based on their demographics, on their interests, on their past browsing behaviour, all that kind of good stuff. You can do some of that stuff with Google as well, more and more advanced. Google advertising is not just about search. So search is the main thing. But there's also YouTube. People know Google owns YouTube, bought YouTube in the early days. I was at Google in 2006 or 7, something around that. And then obviously YouTube is the biggest video channel around, even bigger than TikTok, kids, I'm afraid. But YouTube is still the biggest, and hugely monetized by Google, because Google's got all these advertisers and they're able to apply, to YouTube as well. So it's really successful in that respect. And then you've got this also huge network of third-party sites that have a relationship with Google, and what you might call AdSense. So if you're a publisher, say you've got a blog, cooking blog, you've got a successful cooking blog, those are recipes, people from all around the world go into a cooking blog. You can monetize that by putting some Google ads on it. So you put up various ads that go against your content. You will then get a share of that every time someone clicks on that. That will cost them a certain amount of money, same with search, and Google will keep say 30% of that, and will give you 70%. So it's, that kind of sort of trade-off.
Hi, a friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like and subscribe. And if you are feeling really supportive, please consider reviewing the show on the podcast platform of your choice. It all really helps support what we do. Thank you. Now back to the show.
So there's a kind of a sort of revenue sharing. Google's bringing you the advertisers, monetizing your content, your blog, but it's also obviously keeping a kind of commission itself. And that's called the Google Display Network, what's called GDN. You can advertise on that through various different ways, more advanced kind of formats, things like Performance Max, or just display advertising that you might do through your Google Ads account. You can do video advertising as well on YouTube. That would all be through the same Google account that you would use for search. There's a possibility to do kind of more awareness, more brand orientated stuff, through Google as well. And some search can be brand orientated as well. It's not completely at the bottom of the funnel. Sometimes if you're using kind of more generic keywords, if, for example, I used to work a lot on mobile phones, so I always come to these mobile phones examples. But if someone says just searching for mobile phones, that's obviously a very broad thing. They're not really saying what they want. They're in this very early, I need a mobile phone, in a sort of research phase. So maybe you want to do some of your ads there. Those ads won't perform as well because those people are not in the buying frame of mind just yet. But you can argue you want to appear there because you want to be in that early part of their journey. They may be looking over a couple of weeks. Maybe they start off very generic and then they start or Samsung or Apple. They go even lower. Right, I don't just want an Apple phone. I want the iPhone 15. S or whatever. So all these different terms you can match these different types of terms, if that makes sense, to different stages of the buying process. If we get into sort of marketing speak a bit more, most of the time PPC is seen as performance marketing, which you'd have an ROI from at this bottom sort of end, I guess.
Okay, and then so how does SEO factor into all of this then?
Yeah, I'll take a big swig of water before I talk about SEO. So SEO is very different. So SEO, I guess to make it clear, I think a lot of people get confused about binders, but in the way I was talking about advertising on Google, we could set up a campaign this morning, and by this afternoon, once the ads are sort of set up and approved, they could be appearing, you could be selling some stuff, and that's all very instant. And they're appearing at the top of the Google results mainly, and that's advertising. And you control the message there. You can say, I've got a sale on, I'm the best, this is an offer, we're the leading service, etc., etc. So that's all advertising. That's instant, you pay for it, it's there. SEO is different. So there's two sides to Google, a bit like a newspaper where you have the editorial, talks about what's happening in the world. So that's the interest part of the publication, but you've also got ads on the side. SEO is the editorial side of the search engine. So it's what people have actually come for. People haven't come to see ads, though people say they don't click on ads. Obviously they do click on ads, but maybe they don't realise. But or they're just lying. But the editorial side of things is that they've come to search for stuff. They have a need. They want to find out something. Could be informational. Might just be, what's the fastest land mammal. Or it could be, I want to buy some trainers. So there's commercial intent, and there's kind of obviously just more informational stuff or entertainment or, what's going to happen next week in the weather. So there's all sorts of different reasons you might come to Google. SEO is the stands for search engine optimization for a start. So Google is a search engine mainly. Obviously, there's other search engines that are available. But what you're trying to do there is use some techniques or an understanding of how Google works to get your website or pages from your website to rank. And that's what it's called. That ranking is appearing the highest on the search engine. That's how it's described. So you want to ideally rank at number one. That's not always obviously going to be possible. Lots of other people want to rank at number one. But just like advertising, that first position, or the first organic position, you might call it, says the advertising positions, then below the organic positions start. So you get 2 or 3 ads and you get the first organic positions. No one's paying for these. So Google are serving these up effectively for free. That's the service. But when you click on those, obviously you still get traffic, so that's still very valuable. If you had an ad and then you had the top organic result, you'd be really happy. You're kind of dominating people's screens, and then a lot of people are going to you rather than other people. So a company or a brand will hire someone, or they have people in-house, or hire an agency to do their SEO. What that means is that they've got someone or a team of people kind of on hand advising the people who put content on the website and the webmaster and the marketing people, how could they make their website more kind of Google friendly? How can they create content that's going to reach up to the top of Google? What's the competitive landscape? How can they track all this stuff? How can we figure out where we are? Whether we're beating our competitors, all that kind of stuff, without going into kind of, we can go to all the ins and outs, SEO, if you like, but just on the top level, basically what Google wants is really high. If you think about from a Google perspective what SEO means, and in a way SEO doesn't mean anything to Google, so Google doesn't care about SEO, because SEO is the art of getting stuff on to Google. Google's just trying to provide a really good high quality search engine, and other people are trying to effectively kind of game it maybe a little bit to appear at the top. But what Google's trying to do is provide high quality answers to the questions that people are asking Google. So it wants to do that really quickly. It wants to find the best result. If you can imagine, it's trying to sift through millions of different results. I guess we need to kind of go back to basics a little bit. So how does Google organize any of the results that it displays? There's various different ways, but one of the founders of Google were Sergey Brin and Larry Page. Now, just by coincidence, they called their kind of formula for ranking pages PageRank, and I'm not sure if that was just a little joke or just a coincidence because they were ranking pages, and he was called Larry Page, but that was just luck, I guess. Basically, they had to come up with an algorithm. You hear a lot about algorithms these days on TikTok or elsewhere, but Google has an algorithm. The algorithm decides basically what comes up when you search on Google. How does it do that? It does that in many different ways now. So it was probably a lot simpler 20 years ago, but now it has loads of different factors. One of the main factors that Google kind of has used to sort through the web is the kind of relationship between different websites. So how it establishes that website is through links. So what Google did in the early days was say, well, how are we going to figure out what's the best car site, or what's the best site for news, or what's the best site for the weather, etc., etc. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to look at all the hyperlinks, all the links between sites, and we're going to find sites where everyone's kind of linking to them. So that's a kind of measure, again, a measure of quality. We're talking about quality in search ads. But they figured that actually this kind of linking was a kind of vote of confidence, I suppose, effectively. Everyone's linking to your blog about cookery, and maybe you've got the best blog about cookery, or you've got the best blog about making guacamole on the entire internet because you've got the most links to it. So the people have kind of spoken. So it makes sense. It's kind of human powered but technical way of understanding the internet. The internet's so vast. And maybe back in the day when I was fiddling around reviewing these websites, the internet wasn't as big, and maybe that was possibly a sensible task to attempt. But now it really is absolutely huge, and it's getting huge all the time. So there's no way you can do that in a human form. So there has to be some technology. They chose on this kind of page ranking idea, which is valid, and potentially also it's not just about how many links you have, but it's like what is the authority of the links. You hear the word authority bandied about with SEOs. Let's talk about your page authority or your site authority and this sort of stuff. There's all different measures of that used by different tools. But what that's talking about when it talks about authority is the kind of the reputation, the kudos of a particular site. So what Google did is they said, well, it's not just about how many links you have. So it's not just its sheer quantity. It's again, its quality that's important. So as you can imagine, if you've got a link from, say, the BBC, Daily Telegraph, some really important either newspaper or publication in your industry, the industry Bible for what you do, that or a really good blog that's really well regarded, that's more important than just a random link from anyone. And it starts to sort of give different authorities to different players. and kind of rank them themselves. So the fact is that if you're getting loads of relevant links to you, that's great. But if you're getting links from these kind of authority sites, that's even better. And that's the kind of way, certainly in the early days, that Google worked, and that worked really well. So that brought out really good results. People were like, "Oh yeah, these are the right results, right? These are what I wanted. I wanted, all the information that the BBC had decided was best. What I wanted, all these different expert blogs or expert opinions." Now these days, sometimes people criticize Google and said, is SEO kind of taking over from Google? Are we getting kind of spammy results or results that are somehow engineered by people too much like me or other people kind of just trying to put their company's results up there rather than the kind of best results? Now that's arguable. That I think things have changed a lot over the years. There's lots of other factors now as well. There's things like, I don't know, how popular you are on social media might be a ranking factor, the speed of your site. So Google is able to look at all sorts of, thousands of things. I think there was fairly recently a kind of expose of some documents from Google, which gave a lot more detail kind of behind the curtain of what Google's doing and what it's looking at. And many of these things SEOs kind of knew already, but some of these things were kind of interesting in how they sort of debunked maybe some of the myths and gave you lots of really kind of detailed information. It's not probably for everyone, but if you're really interested in that thing, there is kind of a document floating around that does purport to be what Google looks at and kind of the algorithm semi-explained. You'd have to sort of take that with a bit of pinch of salt because some of it will be out of date as well. But it's interesting, and that's kind of what you're trying to do. So I think if I was to give advice to people just in a very generic sense, I'd say, well, you'll achieve SEO success if you know you've got to know what your audience is. If you know what your audience is, who you're trying to reach, and you can create content that speaks to that audience, either it kind of entertains them or informs them or it closely matches what they want to look for, that's kind of related to your products, honestly, that's going to work. That's your top level thing that you should be trying to do. Now there's all sorts of other things you want to do. You want to build up your link profile, get more links, you want to do some technical things, you need to optimize your content in a certain way, you need to fill out things like meta information and alt tags, all these sort of buzzwords and things that people might not be familiar with. And you need to have a fast website and all sorts of other things that kind of link into that. But effectively, at the end of the day, the big thing you should be concentrating on is think about what Google wants. What do you know about? You know about what your audience is looking for. You know about your products. You know about your services. You're an expert in something. Push that information out in a nice kind of digestible form on your website, in web pages or blogs. Maybe create video content as well. Videos can rank as well. Talk about YouTube. Video SEO is a thing. Videos can rank very highly on Google as well. And when people search on YouTube is also a big search engine at the end of the day. Yes, so that's the big prize. Look at that. Everything else is great. It's useful to, obviously I'm going to say it's useful to hire someone like me, but it's useful to have a strategy. It's useful to be very data driven. I mean, I always think, I was talking with a client, in the first kind of instance, I'd be talking about things like how do they, which kind of keywords do they want to target? You've got to have a clear idea of which keywords you want to rank for at the first instance. I could go away and also do some research using tools that I have. I use Moz, but there's lots of other tools, Ahrefs, SEMrush. People use those to do keyword research. So they'll, a client might say to me, right, we're moving into this product. We need to know all about it. So then I stick that into Moz. Moz will then spit out a load of keywords, maybe thousands, potentially I'd have to kind of filter those down a little bit, maybe by traffic or by different means, and then come back to them and say, these are the sort of 50 or 100 or top 20 keywords that are around the new product area that you want to get into. Let's think about using some of these keywords when we create content around it. So when we create the new page for the product, we're going to use some of these keywords. When we create maybe some other content, a blog about it or some sub pages, really good structure for your website would be, say you've got like 4 services. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 services. Within that, you'd have your kind of main hero page, which should be probably quite fulsome and maybe 1,000 words, maybe lots of pictures, maybe lots of subheadings. SEO likes subheadings. Google likes things to say, this is a thing, this is a subheading, this is not a subheading, this is a subheading, and clearly kind of setting everything out. The structure is quite important. Also, just bear in mind it's a machine. At the end of the day, Google is just sending out its little spiders to look around the internet and find stuff. You've got to say the thing, so be very specific. You've got to use the keywords. Don't be. I mean, marketing can be a bit kind of fluffy and elusive, and let's have some marketing speak.
Be more direct.
Yeah, you've got to be direct. It's just like a computer. So don't try and be too marketing, and that's fine for maybe some parts of your website. But if you want to be optimized for SEO, say the stuff. Maybe say the stuff a few different ways. So you've got to say it, got to include it in there. You don't have to kind of do keyword stuffing. So again, back in the day, maybe 10 years ago, there were all these ways to kind of hack Google, kind of black hat SEO. And there's always a game really between SEOs and between Google. Google's trying to keep ahead on spammy tactics. SEOs maybe are using some spammy tactics to game the system.
Was that like when people used to put like invisible text on their website and stuff like
exactly.
that?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So you'd have the word that you're trying to optimize for 100 times visibly across the website, or that kind of stuff. Yeah. Or you see just really awkward text where someone says the same word again and again.
Right.
And it all gets a bit unnatural and it's really bad to read, and there's no real purpose apart from optimizing for SEO. You can still see that obviously today in kind of stuff that's done slightly badly maybe, but you don't need to do that. We've kind of moved on from that now. Google can understand what something's about without you having to do that. Having said that, there's always a good thing is to just use good techniques of writing really. So I think it's called the second mention in journalism, where you talk about something, but then in the second mention you have to say it a different way.
Hey everyone, sorry to interrupt the episode, but really quick announcement to make. If you're a startup founder, you'll definitely want to hear this. So I want to quickly shout out our sponsor for today's episode, Founder Catalyst. Founder Catalyst have been nailing it with their SEIS and EIS advanced assurance applications, boasting a perfect 100% success rate record over the last 3 years. And if you're using their funding round service, they include that for you as standard. Speaking of their funding round service, it's incredibly cost effective. It's a fixed fee of £1,495 plus VAT. They handle all your funding round legals, regardless of how much you're raising. No monthly fees, no hidden extras. One of their customers recently raised 2.7 million and saved around £10,000 compared to the next best options. Founder Catalyst is run by founders who've been through it all, so they truly understand what you need, and we're really proud to have them sponsor this episode. So if you're looking to streamline your fundraising process and save quite a bit of cash, check out Founder Catalyst in the link in the description, where also you, as a Founders Unplugged viewer, will be privy to 10% off that fee that we talked about. So make sure you use that link in the description to get that applied. Thanks very much. Back to the episode.
So example being, you would say article about Rishi Sunak, and then the second mention would be Prime Minister of UK, and the third mention would be leader of the Conservative Party, because you have to have variety, and people get bored. You just keep saying Rishi Sunak, Rishi Sunak, Rishi Sunak. But yeah, so
that's like just good creative writing. It's creative writing, exactly. In a way, isn't it? Not totally. Using them again.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to have this bad style to keep repeating things.
Yeah.
But the same with SEO. Then you might use that to say things in a slightly different way, because again, Google's it's sophisticated, but it's still just trying to find these words to match to your page or article. So use synonyms, use different ways of saying the same thing, different word orders, that kind of stuff. These are the kind of things that SEOs are going to talk to you about, and they're also going to be able to show you how people search. So they're going to have the data. People search this way. And I guess one thing to actually one good bit of advice is that what has happened in industries, and I've talked about this with lots of my clients, is that people in the industry will have a certain way of speaking or talking, and they'll use proper, formal, maybe scientific or official kind of language or jargon. We've all got all kind of jargon that we use. That's fine, and maybe you kind of optimize towards that. You have that in your Google Ads campaign. Everything is kind of keyword driven a lot in digital marketing, but you've got to really get into the mindset of the customer. You've got to be very customer centric, and people being people, they don't always search in this kind of official way with the right language. They're going to search in their own kind of way. They're going to use their own kind of terms, maybe a bit more slangy, just a bit more casual. So you've got to kind of try and get insight into that and think a little like a consumer, like your customer, and try and use data to use tools to do that. The tool will expose how people are searching. You can use that in Google Ads as well. Google Ads shows you how you've matched to things. Sometimes you don't always precisely match. You have a bit of looseness in what you match to. So that's always worth digging into those kind of logs and seeing how people search, because that's a real insight then into how people are searching. And sometimes that can produce absolute gold that people actually, when they convert, they're searching for this or this particular thing, And that can be really important to commercially you to kind of optimize your sales campaigns for, or to use that in your SEO. And also gives you ideas. So a very simple thing to do, for example, would be to look at what Google has on the page. So I think a lot of people will get kind of caught up in the whole kind of, I don't know, setting the science of it or the kind of technical side of it. But just if you just search for your product or services on Google, there's a few things that I'll tell you. It can tell you without using tools kind of where you are. So you can manually do that and go through all the keywords that are important to you, find out where you are. Like Google models or other tools will do that for you. But you can do that yourself without paying a subscription. Just going to do it manually. The other thing it will show you is who's number one. So it's really important to understand what other people are doing, because I think people also get confused about, not confused, but don't think about the fact that it's very dynamic. So the fact is, people talk will talk to me a lot about, well, we had really good SEO a few years ago, we were dominating, and now we've declined. Now, there'll be lots of reasons for that. One of them will be that they haven't been doing anything about it. So if they were doing something then maybe, and they've declined. Another reason might be just that there were less people in the market at that time. So they could just naturally dominate because they had a decent website, producing good content. Over time, loads of other people have come in. They've either had SEOs themselves, or there's just more people now for the same space. It's a fixed amount of space.
Right.
If there's 2 people who's interested in offering your products, you could be 1 or 2. If there's 10 people, you could be 10. So that happens over time. That tends to happen if you've got a maturing market. So that will make you decline if you're not doing anything about that. So my point was really that search for what you're interested in, what you want people to find you for on Google, see who else is there, see what's happening with the competition, but also click through to their content. So if you want to learn about SEO and what Google likes, you can get expert advice, but you can also just see what Google's likes. So it's all there, it's all public. So search for it, see who's number one, see who's the first 2 or 3 or 4 positions, look at their content and say, well, what is about this content do you think that Google likes? Well, I could probably tell you what it was, but you could just look at it and say, oh yeah, it's because it's really informative, it's quite long, it's got these lovely pictures like I was talking about, or a video, it's all set out nicely with subheadings, it's really comprehensive, it talks about this topic kind of a little bit to death, it really covers the bases. Maybe it's answering one of those typical questions, what are the top 10 things about this, or what these kind of things that people look for, or people publish listicles. What's the definition of this? And it's answered that really well. Really is the best definition. And Google's good at kind of ferreting out this content that is good, or is certainly amongst the best content or best answer to a particular question. The other thing that's really useful to look at is you'll search something. You would have noticed that there's this also people also search for, or people also asked. And that could be like 5 or 10 or sometimes 15 or 20. It opens up kind of concertina sort of thing. Questions. And then those are gold dust as well, because this is real data. This is what people have really searched for. That's related to what you've searched for. And those could be like ideas for blog titles, things that you could write about. It's all about understanding, as I say, what your audience is interested in. You can use tools to do that. You can search on Google. You could even speak to your customer service people. So what are the things that people are asking about all the time? What are their problems? What are their pain points? This is all kind of good marketing thing to do anyway, again, to be customer-centric. But for SEO, these could be really good things. You can create content to address those needs. So next time they're searching for that, they find your article, which answers their pain point better than competitors do. And they haven't even thought to do that. And you're there helping them. And then obviously they potentially, on your website, grateful for the help. These guys really solved my problem, and I'm going to buy the products from them. So it's all about generating traffic at the end of the day. Advertising is doing that. You're paying for it. SEO is doing that in a more long-term sense. So it's not so the negative, I suppose, about investing in SEO. It's not instant. So with advertising, you kind of control it pretty much. You know how much you're paying. You know what the competition is. You can kind of control your message, and you can put it there instantly. With SEO, Google has all the secrets. Google changes from time to time, so things can be kind of disrupted. A couple of times a year, Google does a big sort of shake-up of the algorithm, and that can really disrupt things. You don't own those results, so it's dangerous, I would say, to build your entire business on SEO, because it's dangerous on any platform. I mean, there's one bit of advice I'll give to startups particularly, is it's very dangerous to build a business on things that you don't own. So you don't own Google's algorithm. Google, could be destroyed by AI search engines in the next 5 years. Probably not going to happen, but that could happen. If you built your business on TikTok, that might be fabulous for 3 or 4 years, but then the next TikTok comes along, TikTok's not popular anymore, your business goes like this. So it's really important not to, I suppose it's just about not putting too many eggs in one basket. Fantastic to be SEO optimized, fantastic to be popular on social media, but maybe try and be popular on a couple of different channels, or try and get your customer details. So make sure, even if you are popular from SEO or from TikTok, you somehow you gather those details to yourself. So you've got an email marketing list, you've got an email list, you've got a list of customers, that kind of stuff. You want that owned data. I mean, data is really important, and data is going to become more. Your data is going to become more important over the next few years, particularly because cookies are going away. So cookies, as the way that digital marketing is measured and tracked, are going to go away. Google's going to change it in Chrome. Well, they're saying Q1 now in 2025. But basically, there's going to be a new way of measuring advertising, a more slightly more privacy-centric way. So the importance of your data is only going to become more important, really. You should really understand your data. It's important, as I say, not to rely on things yet. Just don't rely on things you don't own, because things change. You could have the treasured #1 spot on Google for a whole load of stuff that's really important to your business. But what happens if Google changes? Google can change its algorithm overnight, and your sales could go like this. So you've got to be doing other things. You've got to be mitigating that risk. So really important to do stuff like SEO. Really important to do advertising, or to be building up a community on TikTok or on YouTube or on Facebook. But just bear in mind, these companies they're always trying to monetize. So I mean, TikTok's a good example actually now. So Facebook, I don't know if you remember back in maybe 5 years ago or longer with Facebook, if you were a big brand, you could have like 2 million followers on Facebook, and you can get huge amounts, effectively just free traffic coming to you. And you were like, this is amazing, I love this social media. But what happened was Facebook went public, and they were like, well, let's turn this dial down a bit, and let's try out this advertising dial. And people have the same stuff, but they're going to have to pay for it. So that's what they did. That's effectively what all platforms do, to a certain extent. They want to, and they need to monetize, especially when they have shareholders. So TikTok at the moment is a good example of that. TikTok is probably the place now on social media to get lots of organic reach. You set a TikTok account, you get thousands of views if you're producing something that people like, and you can do that relatively easily. You can't do that, so you can't really become famous on Facebook, because you'd have to kind of pay to get that exposure, and Instagram probably to a certain extent as well. But TikTok is like, have all this free traffic. We'll send the algorithm For You page might pick you out, and suddenly your videos have got thousands or hundreds of thousands of views. So the temptation will for now, the temptation will be, let's get on TikTok. That's a place now. But what will happen is gradually, guys in China will just be turning the monetization up and up and up and up, and that organic reach will start to fall a little bit. And once everyone's kind of hooked in, they hook you in as advertisers or brands or just creators, people who are creating content as members of the public. And eventually some of that good kind of free organic traffic will go down. Now, what the balance of that will be or how quickly that will happen. But that will inevitably happen. It's like if you speak to me in 2 or 3 years' time, people will be saying, do you remember back in the day with TikTok, we used to get all these views, it was amazing, but now you have to pay, especially brands. And creators, they want creators still to emerge. Maybe that's a different kind of game. But for advertisers, they don't want to give Coca-Cola millions and millions of free views. That's not a thing that's going to make their business work well for them in the long term. Just be cautious of kind of sticking everything on res and then hoping that's going to be the same, because digital is very fast moving.
You mentioned AI there as well briefly about being an emerging search engine option for people. And that's why I wanted to ask you about next, actually, was what your thoughts are on that, because I am hearing more and more now that people are going to things like ChatGPT to get answers to their questions in the more, I guess, the less ad-centric way or commercial way that people want to just get information, right? Which is really interesting. Well, how do you think that's going to affect companies like Google and that whole market? Do you think there's going to be a similar approach of monetization, really being pushed from companies like that, and we're going to start seeing ads in ChatGPT?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously AI is a huge area. It's changing already lots of things, and what's going to happen with AI is not something that I'm going to be able to answer.
Right.
I could give you some thoughts about it. So I guess AI and big tech. So I guess what's happened really is that AI is obviously something that all companies have been working on behind the scenes for a long time. So Google hasn't just discovered AI. Google's been working on AI and incorporating AI into its products for a long time. If you think about, Google Translate, something that's been around for maybe 10 years, that effectively is just machine learning, and that's something that's got better and better and better. When you first used Google Translate, you would probably be very much not advised to base, a sort of translation of a language and publish it on your website. If you used it today, it probably would be pretty good, and then actually you may not be quite so worried about it. So these things are getting better and better, and you've got things like you can speak into your phone, and it will actually speak out, what you said, like the kind of babel fish thing that was in Hitchhikers. That's now a possibility. So all these things are kind of amazing, and from the search engine point of view, I mean, Google obviously has had a bit of it's kind of like a publicity hit to itself, I suppose. What happened was, I think, is that Google, as a huge company now, is in typical fashion a lot more cautious than smaller companies. So, and because Google is all about information and good information, AI is both a kind of accelerator for Google, I suppose, but also a massive danger. Because if Google just sticks a load of AI into Google, into its product, its search engine, and it's rubbish, then that basically just kill their business. So it's like I think it's like kryptonite for Google AI actually in many ways, because I think they obviously realise that we're entering into this AI age, and they've got to put some AI in their products. There's been sprinkle some more fairy dust on everything from a marketing and a sort of product point of view. But at the same time, when you see these examples, for example, Google's AI product in search is called SGE, so it's called the Search Generative Experience, and the idea of that is that you'll get these kind of answers at the top of Google as well as the normal Google results. Now that's been rolled out in the US and will be rolled out in Europe. It's being rolled out in Europe now, so you'll see that in the UK fairly soon. That's called AI Overviews, is the consumer name of that. That's been something that SEOs particularly are interested in. For obvious reasons, because that's going to take a chunk of real estate at the top of the page for certain queries. And how do that's just a bigger, this is something we could talk about a long time actually, is that how can SEOs influence that? Because AI is this black box that no one really knows how or where it finds its information, apart from people at Google or OpenAI. So how are SEOs going to start to influence that? So that's a big problem for SEOs in the future. But AI itself, so for Google, they obviously need to do something with AI, and they need to do something publicly. OpenAI have stolen the big march, and then they released the LLM the end of last year. Everyone was like, oh, this is amazing. You can do these pictures, you can get all this stuff. And it suddenly seemed like Microsoft and OpenAI are ahead of Google, which is not something that Microsoft probably enjoyed for quite a long time. Having suffered in the whole search market and not really being able to combat Google in any way. With Bing has always been very small and just copies Google in many ways in its advertising model and its features. So Microsoft kind of given up the ghost of trying to compete with Google on search, to be honest. It's kind of just got to kind of copy me too kind of products. But suddenly, like, Microsoft, the cool kids in town, which is again not something that Microsoft probably enjoyed too much in recent years, because they've got this great partnership with OpenAI. They're putting it into Copilot on Bing, and then they're putting it into all their products, and they're putting it into laptops soon. So they've announced that they're going to have all, OpenAI's ChatGPT is going to be, or their version of it is going to be in the new versions of their tablets and their laptops, and yes, they've seemed like they've stolen this kind of march from Google, and I think they have from a publicity point of view. I think in the backgrounds, there was lots of talk of kind of code red for Google. So code red, like engineering speak. All the engineers suddenly stuck on AI if they weren't working on AI already. We've got to knock out our product now because everyone's saying that we're rubbish now because we don't have any obvious LLM or AI products, even though we do. We bought DeepMind, and we're really good at AI, but from a public point of view, suddenly it seems like we're terrible again. Well, we're somehow not innovators as well, which I think is obviously a concern for Google because they want to be seen as a leading company in everything they do. So they've caught up now. You've obviously got Gemini, which is their latest version of it was called Bard before. It's now called Gemini. It's their LLM. You can pay 20 quid a month, like you can pay for ChatGPT to get the kind of latest and greatest version. It does the best things. I think the problem with AI is
If you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This lets YouTube know we are doing something right. Back to the show.
I don't know. I just want to seem too cynical about AI. I think AI is going. My opinion on AI is that it's going through a massive hype cycle at the moment, which it definitely is. I don't think anyone would argue about that. I think what's interesting, what I think about what you should do, and I think when you see a lot of these announcements from Sam Altman or all these other people who have LLMs, what you'll notice they do a lot is they don't talk about what AI can do now. They're all about the future. So they're like, release a new version of ChatGPT 4.0, and they'll show some demos, some of which might be a bit sketchy when you actually try to do that yourself. And they don't do that. But a lot of it is promise. So it's like, oh, we can do Sora. Look at Sora. This is amazing. We made this 30-second clip. But then, oh, it's not available at the moment. And people were like, oh, we can make a whole film, a Hollywood film. Yeah, it's amazing. We just write a Hollywood film. But then actually that's not going to be available for like years. So I think you've got to think about what does AI do now? And I think arguably, and some people won't like this, but I will say that AI doesn't do anything particularly useful now. It does the fun stuff. Like it's quite fun for me to write, let's see a picture of a surfer in Hawaii on a giant wave, and I could use that for something. That's quite entertaining. I'm not very artistic. So
someone made a really good explanation of what LLMs really are to me recently. They said the best way to look at an LLM is they're a poet, right? They are a creative writer, and and just like a poet or a creative writer, they're looking at all of the things that they have previously read. It just so happens they have access to most of the stuff ever written, but they are still creative about it. So they are going to embellish, and they're going to try and make it sound good like a poet. They're not really too interested in being accurate, which I thought was a really interesting way of looking at it. And I think a mistake that a lot of people have made, especially when you look at like the big scandals, like lawyers trying to use it to write their affidavits and like all this kind of stuff, where it's just like, no, don't do that. It's a good way to maybe get going. Like I see that as being its use.
I'm not saying there's no use to it at all.
But it's not. Yeah, you're right. There is a certain hype to it for sure. But I'm interested. What are your thoughts? Because my startup is working on some areas of this, which I can't reveal too much now. But we're very much working on the assumption that I think is a commonly held one about AI training data being a very limited resource, right? Because there is a big concern about the rise of AI, meaning people are creating more content based on with AI, like I just mentioned, and you're then going to get AI being trained on AI, and there's going to be this issue of non-human annotated or arbitrated data being pushed back in, and as we know with data, shit in, shit out, right? What are your thoughts on that, and how that is potentially going to affect the sort of future of this space as well?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, there's this thing that it's kind of like the law of diminishing returns, isn't it?
Right.
Everything's trained on AI, and then it's another version of AI. It's getting worse. It's not getting better.
Right.
And I think they've seen some evidence of that, haven't they? With some of when they're saying that the latest version of ChatGPT, some of the things it does stuff worse than it used to do, or so there's like a diminishing of thing. And also, I guess the other aspect to that is that loads of publishers are getting wise now and putting out lawsuits against these companies. They're trying to get their share of the money.
Right.
So the New York Times, I think, was suing, those people. Other people who have, photo libraries. Other people who've got lots of data that's been used maybe slightly surreptitiously in the past have got wise to it now. And they're closing it off, or they won't get paid for it.
Right. So that context is being called now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's getting much more difficult for them to do that. They either have to pay for it, or they have to not use it. So that's going to be an issue. And I think the thing is, as you say about LLMs and stuff, they are kind of, I see them a bit like a tool looking for a job. So they can do lots of things, but what do you want to do with them? And can they do any one thing particularly well? They can make a picture, they can maybe come up with some very generic ideas for a blog, or they can maybe do some kind of admin task really well, some mass admin task that you might do. It might take loads of time. Maybe they can kind of machine do that, and that's great. But I think, in terms of startups like your own or other people's startups, I think the interesting thing with AI is going to be what's happening in the background now. Is that in the background, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of startups trying to use, either, I guess, off the shelf or something they've generated themselves to do specific tasks. Now, I think that's where the that's what's going to work, is when you set an AI to do a very specific task, which you put in guardrails, you teach it something, you put some human kind of stuff in there as well, and you set it to work on something specific, then you can come up with some really powerful tools that solve a specific problem or solve a specific set of problems. And I think there's going to be all sorts of startups that emerge and say, right, we've used AI to solve this problem, and now you can do this thing, which is really valuable to some particular, sector or person or company.
It's interesting you say that,
organisation.
because that's a bit stalled as well. Because we have seen that, right? We've seen a lot of people using like the the open AI API and all of that kind of stuff, and seen tons of startups be born doing that sort of thing, But then what inevitably happens is OpenAI announce a new feature that essentially just destroys hundreds of these things. It's like, oh no, we could do that now, and then of course all these companies die. So it's interesting, especially from like the investor world, which I'm part of. I speak to a lot of investors since the announcement, especially of OpenAI's ChatGPT 4, and like you said, that promised a lot more than it sort of delivers. Because they've got a basic understanding. They're like, oh, that's just going to replace all. We're not investing in those kind of businesses anymore. And it's like, that's a missed opportunity. Like these, you're talking about a founder and a team and a product and everyone that's really focused, like you say, on a really niche issue and the human element and all of that kind of stuff versus this generalist. It's like my money would be on these guys, sometimes, not always, sometimes the ideas are a bit wishy-washy,
I think there's a good parallel to that, and something that people talk about different technologies, but there's a good parallel with Google. So, for example, when Google started, it had this search engine, and it was covering all the bases, and you go to Google to find stuff. But then obviously other companies started to emerge who did search or offered particular types of services online in a specific way. So you could argue that, Amazon grabbed a lot of e-commerce searches and they took them to Amazon. So rather than going to Google, you can actually go for a product. You might go to Amazon and search on their marketplace and forget about Google. So back in the day, you might have gone to Google and searched for, your kitchen scissors again. I'm only saying that because I bought some kitchen scissors the other day. So you go straight to Amazon, though. You wouldn't bother searching Google. So Google is disintermediated, which is what Google doesn't like. But also there's lots of vertical search. So the example would be money supermarkets. So again, back in the day, when people first started using search engines, they would search for all their personal finance stuff on Google, and Google would charge them potentially with an ad to go to that provider. But now you go to Money Supermarket, and you do your comparisons, or you go to compare the market, or all these other things which have emerged, and they're verticalizing. They're taking the finance vertical or the credit card vertical, and they're taking a piece of that, and Google can't have all of it anymore. And the same with travel. So you've got Expedia, you've got Last Minute. They're all taking parts of the travel stuff, or hotels.com. They're taking the search for, and Google tries to fight back. So it produces then a specialized flight search or a specialized hotel search that goes to the top of the thing. So Google can kind of fight back a bit. But there's that same kind of specialization. We can do this better because Google is always going to be a generalist. So we can take travel search, and we can do travel search better than you, Google, because we're going to put all these little widgets in. We're going to have all this extra content and all that kind of stuff. So it's the same sort of thing.
Well, and like you touched on YouTube, right? I mean, obviously Google ended up buying them, but they obviously saw the writing on the wall there, and why they bought them was that they realized, which was happening at the time, that this is emerging as as a huge threat to Google. From a search engine perspective. So it's hugely interesting, and that's a really valid point, and I'm going to remember that as a way of explaining it in future, because I think I've never really had a good way of explaining that until now, which is as well. Yes, you can have a predominant generalist business in a space, but there's always going to be the need for individuals who competition that can
Facebook to Snapchat. So Snapchat emerged. Kids love the disappearing messages, but they invented the idea of stories on social media, right? That was a Snapchat thing that was then just stolen. So Mark Zuckerberg is famous for seeing little competitors arriving. He either buys them, so he bought WhatsApp, and he bought Instagram, but then I don't know if he offered money to Snapchat in the first place, they refused. Maybe he did do that, and that's probably, I should know that. But then he thought, well, sod this. I was going to swear there. Just say sod this, that's right. And then just copied the stories. He just said, well, I'll just take the stories then, I'll just put it on Instagram, and then suddenly I've got stories, and everyone likes my stories, and because Instagram's bigger maybe than Snapchat, we kind of own the stories. And TikTok has produced the idea of vertical video and algorithmic video. Well, then what did YouTube do to fight back? YouTube Shorts and Instagram have done Reels. So they're all stealing features of each other, and the big players either buy.
And sometimes it can be
or,
something that ends up taking over and killing the initial thing, and sometimes it can be just it's a shared idea. It really depends, doesn't it? I suppose, and depends on the moat that they've built around that initial concept.
Exactly.
And ideally, they have more to offer than just
we've got that power and scale, and ChatGPT can do the same thing as you say. They can see that, well, that's a clever little startup idea. We'll just make that tick box on ChatGPT,
right.
And as you say, that potentially then kills that amazing idea, or they just buy they do. I mean, big tech is notorious for doing acqui-hire, doesn't it? So it's buying a company, but just buying the engineers, because the engineers are the talent. They're the ones who have the idea,
or buying it to kill it.
Work.
Because they want their own solution to be more popular. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to think about defensibility, I suppose, as a startup. That's why it's such a big thing. But look, we are amazingly somehow towards the end of our time, which I don't know how we... So, I really hope... I certainly learned a lot listening from you, and you have a fascinating story, and I really, really appreciate you jumping on. But before we go, I'm just curious to know, last few minutes there, I mean, first of all, where can people find you so they can learn about you and your agency and so on? But also, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you really wanted to just get some words on? Maybe something that's been on your mind, keeping you up at night, anything at all. I always like to try and give people the opportunity.
So you can find me, so my business, I'll repeat that, is called Bluebell Marketing. And then my website is bluebell.marketing. So you can find it there and get in contact with me. Always happy to chat to people. So if you want to talk about Google Ads or anything that I do, always happy to have just a free chat with them and talk about their marketing. Really open to that. Is there anything I want to talk about? I think one thing I'd like to talk about, maybe briefly, is that I think technology is obviously great, and I'm really into technology, and I love talking about AI and thinking about new tech and big tech and all this sort of stuff. But I think on the other side of things, obviously there's a dark side to things, and there's a whole thing around safety, and there's a negative side to all this bright, shiny stuff. I don't necessarily want to get into that, but I think just thinking a little bit, because we're speaking on the day of the election and thinking about politics and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to make a political statement, don't worry. But one thing I think I'm concerned about is about people being left behind. So I think a lot of the time, people like me and you, we're so excited about technology. We're living in this world. We're thinking about AI, and obviously not everyone's like that. So not everyone's interested. So a lot of people are doing their own thing. They're not interested in technology, and we're excited about it, and they're not. So that's important to us to understand that as well. Because this whole thing about the future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. I think that's really true. So I think there's a lot of people, perhaps in our industry, are using futuristic type of tools and doing interesting stuff. Lots of people aren't doing that, and they're maybe years behind. And also there's this idea, I think one thing I'm concerned about is digital poverty. So I thought it was upsetting that during the pandemic, for example, there were kids who were having to do work at home, and they only had maybe one laptop between a few different kids, or they had no laptop, or they had to borrow their mum and dad's phone to do their homework.
Yeah, that was very eye-opening.
So I think that's a real tragedy, and older people as well. It's not just kids, people who obviously can't afford to buy devices, or older people who just can't understand the internet. They've just never used it. Suddenly they've got to go onto the government website to do something that's really important to them, to apply for a benefit. So everything is getting digitized, which is great, and it does save people's time. It saves money. It's fantastically efficient. But I think we've just got to remember that not everyone is equally kind of lucky to have a decent living, maybe to have devices that can access the internet. And I think also not everyone has those sort of technical skills. People either don't, because they're older, perhaps. Not to say that lots of older people are really good with technology as well. But I think we've got to remember that, and then we've got to not design things which leave people behind. So I think that's really important.
That's really interesting, and something that it definitely isn't talked about enough. The sort of technical poverty that exists, I guess, and that's super interesting. Well, look, next time you're on, if you can stand talking to me again for another couple of hours in the future, we can dive into that. I think that's a super interesting thing to explore. So, but for now, I'll make sure the website you mentioned is in the description of the episode. I'll put your LinkedIn profile as well. Is that okay? So people can connect with you and talk with you there. Yeah, awesome. Really, really appreciate you being on, Barney. It's really great to catch up, and I hope you enjoyed yourself, and we'll do this again soon. Best of luck.
Yeah,
we'll catch up again.
Yeah,
you did good. That's good to know.
Thanks very much,
All right.
Greg. Cheers.
My pleasure. Have a lovely day. We'll speak again very soon.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening and or watching. Please like and subscribe. Or if you are listening via podcasting service and want to show your support, consider rating or leaving a review. It really helps. See you next week.